Welcome to this brief video on the notions of dampness and phlegm in traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM. In TCM, these two complex pathologies are viewed as being related. Dampness, or shi, and phlegm, or tan, have a broader meaning than our common understanding of these words. Dampness relates to two phenomena. First, the pathology of fluids in the body, as might be indicated by edema, swelling, bloating, or watery stools. And secondly, by its potential for interfering with the normal activity of qi in the body, as might be indicated by digestive issues or arthritis. Dampness is associated with a broad range of ailments, and its sources and consequences can be internal or external. In the 5 transformations, dampness is associated with the late summer, when heavy rains fall in the south of China, resulting in excessive humidity. We can all recognize the lethargy we feel on a hot, humid day, and the same feeling may be the result of pathological dampness. Externally, skin issues such as eczema and acne are often ascribed to dampness, and these conditions are often aggravated by the environment. Dampness is often closely related to poor nutrition or to an unhealthy lifestyle, so treatment should take this into account. It is often associated with chronic diseases, which can include pathological obesity. Dampness usually installs itself in the body over a long period of time, and so it can be understandable that treating it may take even longer. This is often a great source of frustration for the patient. When dampness is not treated, it will often evolve into phlegm. Heat or cold often contribute to this process. Apart from its meaning as the sputum coughed up during heavy colds, phlegm in its TCM sense is also associated with more palpable signs, such as nodules, tumors, or cysts, and often indicates a more serious disease. In Chinese medicine, dampness is classified as one of the 6 excesses, or liu yin, that cause disease. Liu yin also translates as the 6 untimely climatic influences. The word yin here is commonly associated with excessive rain. When we consider the health dangers posed by water and wind, the art of feng shui becomes as much a protection against bad influences as a path to good luck. One of the more troublesome aspects of dampness is that it easily combines with other factors, making treatment more difficult. Common combinations are wind dampness, cold dampness, and damp heat. These combinations actively contribute to blockage of any form in the body, be it qi, fluids, or nutrition. Arthritis, for example, is regarded as a blockage of qi and blood, and is ascribed to pathogenic wind, cold, and dampness. This blockage is called B syndrome in TCM. Dampness can also be viewed in the context of yang and yin. In one of its meanings, yin is synonymous with the fluid elements of our body. These consist of our blood, or shui, which I have covered in another video, and of our other body fluids, which are together referred to as jin ye. Jin ye is the general term for any body fluid, used to protect, nourish, or lubricate the body. This can range from saliva to sweat to tears to mucus. The jin fluids are thought to be lighter and more watery, serving to moisten and nourish our skin and muscles. The ye fluids, in turn, are thicker and more viscous, and nourish our internal organs, brain, bones, and body orifices. When the body fluids combine with a pathogen, this produces dampness. Because of its watery nature, dampness can affect any part of the body. Nonetheless, as a yin pathogen, it has an affinity for the lower part of our body, in particular affecting our legs and excretory functions. Dampness impedes the circulation of our qi and the fluids in our body, causing stagnation. As stagnation increases, dampness can transform to phlegm, which manifests itself in a more viscous or solid form. The Chinese notion of phlegm goes beyond the thick substance secreted by the mucous membranes of our respiratory passages that is produced during a cold. This is referred to as tan yin, or phlegm room. In TCM, phlegm is also associated with any extraneous solid lumps on our body, such as nodules and ulcers. In modern times, phlegm is often cited in cases involving cancer. Another more unusual type of phlegm is called formless phlegm. This is characterized as a type of blockage that cannot readily be associated with a physical origin, but which nonetheless impedes the correct functioning of an organ, which is typically the heart. formless phlegm is often associated with psychological problems. The period when the first TCM classic texts were established, some 2,000 years ago, was a time of scarcity and difficult living conditions, so most of the texts refer to dampness originating from the exterior. The Ming and the Qing dynasties were times of considerable economic improvement, giving rise to diseases associated with excessive well-being. These were often associated with internal dampness. If we consider the famous quote from the Tao Te Ching, that the greatest good is like water, it is instructive to note that in its excess or uncontrolled form, water causes great harm. China suffered through massive floods throughout its history. One of its mythological kings, Tai Yu, was famous for introducing flood control, allowing the people to live in safety. Chinese medicine has always drawn metaphorical comparisons to its geography. The Huangdi Neijing establishes the relationship between dampness, the spleen, and the lungs. It also connects dampness with the earth element, which is symbolic of the spleen or Qi. Like the earth, the spleen takes what we put into it, transforms it, and creates nourishment for us. In the restriction cycle of the 5 transformations, the earth is said to control water. In ancient times, dikes made of earth would be used to control the flow of water. However, when water is excessive and uncontrolled, it overcomes the earth and creates mud, which is a perfect analogy for the impediment produced by dampness. As a reminder, according to TCM, the stomach and spleen work in tandem to process both food and liquids. The stomach is said to prefer moisture, while the spleen prefers to function in dryness. The spleen is responsible for the transportation and transformation of both food and liquids. According to TCM, the products of the spleen pass through the lungs and onto the heart. If spleen functionality is impaired, dampness begins to establish itself in the body, and the lungs become a point of accumulation of both dampness and phlegm. Thus, most treatment of dampness and phlegm focuses on the spleen, whose impaired functionality is seen as the source of the problem. Returning to the classics, the Shang Han Lun only mentions the word for dampness 3 times. However, if we look more carefully at terminology and symptoms used in the text, it becomes clear that many of the formulas are aimed at conditions that TCM recognizes as dampness and phlegm. There are a lot of references to urinary problems and edema, which can be linked to improper water transformation, water accumulation, and even water reversal. The second part of the Taiyang section deals with the transfer of external disease to the foot Taiyang channel's Fu organ, that is, the urinary bladder, thereby creating water amassment. Zhang Zhongjing's Jingui Yao Lue, or Essential Prescriptions from the Golden Cabinet, devotes a chapter to different forms of phlegm and a chapter to water qi disease. These topics are too extensive to cover here, and I will try to present them in another video. As a final note, the Chinese word for phlegm does not appear in the Huangdi Neijing, although phlegm-like conditions are considered, especially in the last chapter of the Ling Shu, which deals with obstruction and impediment illnesses. As I mentioned before, the Ming and Qing dynasties were marked by diseases associated with economic comfort. The Wen Bing school of medicine frequently referenced aspects of the Sanjiao or triple burner theory in its treatments for dampness and phlegm. Although jiao means a burner, the concept is intimately connected with the transportation of water. A better way to consider it is as 3 cauldrons of water that are interconnected. The Sanjiao is defined in the Huangdi Neijing as the official who keeps the channels clear. The paths of water originate in it. The Nanjing, or Classic of Difficulties, expands further on the Sanjiao. The 31st difficult question states that the Sanjiao is the passage of water and grain, the beginning and the end of qi. The 66th difficult question states that the Sanjiao is a special messenger of the original qi. It rules the passage of the 3 qi and their progress through the 5 zang and 6 fu organs. Xue Shangbai and Wu Jutong wrote extensively on dampness and the Sanjiao, and I talk about this material in my video on the Wen Bing School of Medicine. You can find the link to that video in the information section below. The causes of dampness and phlegm can be both external and internal. Seasonal rain will obviously contribute to dampness, especially when it is combined with excessive cold or heat. Living in a basement or other location susceptible to humidity can exacerbate dampness. Less obviously, but equally importantly, toxins and pollutants will induce many of the signs and symptoms identified by dampness in TCM. Teenagers in polluted cities tend to have more serious cases of acne, which is often ascribed to dampness. As concerns internal causes, diet is probably the most important contributing factor. Sugar-laden food and drinks, processed food, greasy food, and excessive alcohol consumption all give rise to dampness. Less obviously, a constant diet of raw and cold food can also lead to dampness by taxing a weak digestive system. Overall, an unhealthy lifestyle with irregular meals and little sleep, overwork or overexertion will exhaust our body's ability to manage the factors leading to dampness, and many of these causes are often linked with additional psychological issues. Lastly, we have to consider our body's natural constitution, which in some cases prevents adequate treatment. Treatment in the first instance requires removing or reducing the problem-causing factors, which are often interrelated. In many cases, the best approach is that of fasting combined with meditation. This approach is outside the scope of this video, and I would recommend that you approach fasting under the personal guidance of someone experienced, with a good background in nutrition. In terms of TCM herbal treatment methods, the main focus would be on dispelling dampness, which usually lies at the root of these problems. Where necessary, phlegm-dispelling formulas and herbs will be used. Less obviously, in most cases, qi needs to be tonified. Dampness impedes and weakens qi, which in turn opens the body up to further dampness. So tonifying qi is useful in this process. Dampness can be removed directly or indirectly. The three main ways of removing dampness are draining through promotion of urination, resolution by sweating, and drying. Indirect removal can be promoted by tonifying qi. If we look at the TCM classification of formulas, we can see that there are explicit formulas for expelling dampness and phlegm. Nonetheless, given the complicated ways dampness can combine with other pathogenic factors, and the diverse ways it can affect the body, almost any category of formula may play a role in treatment, especially when the ideas of formed and formless phlegm are included. Although I presented you with some of the complexity of treating dampness and phlegm, I hope you found this video useful and will join me in future videos where I will address more specific cases and formulas.